Here's the best way to get your ads to show up in the #1 position on Google Ads consistently, and it's called Target Impression Share. And I'm going to explain where to find this inside of your Google Ads account, and also my opinions and pros and cons around using this feature. Okay, so let's go into your Google Ads account. Let's select a campaign, go into the campaign settings, and then we'll let that load and click on the bidding area. So inside of the bidding area, click on Change Bid Strategy, and then scroll down and click on or select a bid strategy directly. Now, inside of the options, you'll see this Target Impression Share. And so we're going to click on that, and then we have 3 more options. So we've got Anywhere on Results Page, we've got Top of Results Page, and we've got Absolute Top of Results Page. So what do these mean? Anywhere on Results Page, that's basically whenever you see your search impression share, and it's like, this amount, 24%, and you want it to get to 50%, this is one of those levers you can pull to improve that number. So you might go Anywhere on Results Page, which will improve your search impression share, and then you might say 50%. Now, this is not guaranteed simply because you can't just bid the highest and beat everyone. That's not how Google Ads work. You still need to have amazing landing pages that are really, really relevant to the keywords you're bidding on and really great ads, etc. Right? So as long as you're following the other rules, then you will improve your search impression share just by following this here. The other option where it said Top of Results Page, that is a bit different from the Absolute Top of Results Page. So what are these two? Well, basically you got Absolute, which is #1 position, and then you got Top of Page, which is we can say anything 2, 3 or whatever above the organic. So you might have SEO results below here, and it's just below these ads. And then it's anything basically above the SEO results page, if that makes sense. So if you find inside of like your Google Ads account, you're seeing your absolute top is like 28% or something, or your top is 17%, for example, out of all the auctions that you're entering into, then you might want to improve that number so you close this gap here, or you might want to close the gap between these two. Right? And so the way you would do that, of course, is you're like absolute top of page results, and then you might say, like wishful thinking, you're like 100%, right? But then you'd have to bid more than anyone, right? And I'm going to explain how this kind of works. The way that the auction works, or the algorithm, is that it will adjust your bids in real time so that it hits your target that you've set inside of those options that I shared with you. And it factors in your auction time signals, so how many competitors are bidding on that single auction right now at this time of the day, and on this particular device, and in this location. Like there's a lot of different factors outside of your control. It takes a look at the ad rank inputs, so the bid for that particular keyword, takes a look at your quality score for that particular keyword, takes a look at your ad relevance and expected ad CTR, etc. And it takes a look at your max CPC cap, which what we didn't explain, you can actually add a maximum CPC cap. And I'll explain what you can kind of look at to see whether or not you're bidding too low or too high for a certain keyword based on this cap. So before we get into that, I want to quickly explain that target impression share is not the same as maximize conversions. It really doesn't give a crap about your conversion likelihood. It doesn't care if the click is good or bad. Its only objective really is to achieve the goal that you've presented it inside of those settings so that it can achieve similar numbers or similar results, right? So there are pros and cons to using target impression share. There is no be-all end-all bidding strategy. So the pros are it's great for emergency services like plumbers, locksmiths, or criminal lawyers and things like that, where being in the first position means everything. Like as long as you're in the first position, you will win the bid most likely, and you'll win the conversion, and they will convert into a customer, right? It's useful for brand campaigns. If you're trying to protect your name at the very top and you want to show up nearly every time, then you can protect your brand by adding target impression share. It gives you control over visibility. So as you can imagine, if you've got particular goals on making sure that a certain ad is showing up in a certain position, top of page, then you've got more control over this as long as your landing page is great and your keywords are great, etc. And then the final thing is awareness campaigns, which I don't usually recommend doing in general unless you're government or, private sector, which ironically awareness for private sector. But yes, they do run those kind of campaigns. Visibility being the goal, target impression share is the thing that you want to use, right? Not really maximize clicks or anything like that. The cons are it's expensive as hell, right? So if you're in a very competitive industry, like I know some industries in finance and, as I said, criminal lawyers, they can pay anywhere between, $300 to $500 per click. And if you're trying to bid on the very first position, then you're going to eat up all your budget, right? It's not efficient for e-commerce. So do not recommend using this for e-commerce, because a lot of people, or even research heavy searches, because a lot of people compare things and they keep scrolling and they go through organic, etc. It can attract a lot of low value clicks. So, you've got to be keeping that in mind. That's why maximize conversions is sometimes way better, even if you're in one of these competitive markets for plumbers and lawyers and stuff like that. And as I said already, it doesn't really care about conversions or quality of traffic, only about position. So how much do you actually have to spend so that you're getting your ads shown at the very top? And so I want to explain this using Google Keyword Planner. So I pulled these screenshots from Google Keyword Planner and I typed in defense lawyer near me, and it's got 18,000 searches. And it said that the top of page bid for this keyword, for the low range, is $4 and the high range is $44. So what does this really mean? So basically it's the entry level cost that other advertisers have to pay to get into the top area on the search engine results page before the SEO starts at the very, in the middle of the page, right? So it's any ad above that section. And they've got the high range and the low range, right? So the low range is the bare minimum entry cost. And then this, the 44, is how much advertisers are willing to pay usually for this top position, like the absolute top. So it makes sure that they get more consistent placement at the very absolute top of page, but it doesn't guarantee number one position. Again, it's just showing you maybe a historic performance on what other advertisers have paid in the past for that number one position. But you can still factor in things like quality score and your ad relevance and things, and you don't necessarily have to pay this amount. You can still win the top position just by bidding like $12, for example, and cutting somewhere in the middle. Because even if other advertisers are willing to bid more than you, yet your landing pages are more relevant, you'll still win at a lower price, so you got to think about that with the bidding. So with a plumber spending around $200 a day, it might make more sense to have a separate campaign that is just for emergency style plumbing. People in emergencies usually click the first thing they see, right? And so the issue with this is if your budget is too small and it costs $100 a click or $300 a click, then that's probably going to eat away everything. So it might not make sense to go for absolute top, if you're trying to bid on number one spot, and you'll eat through your entire budget really quickly in like 2 to 3 clicks. Or even less, 1 click, so it might be safer to target just top of page. You can still beat the number one position even though they're willing to pay more, right? A criminal lawyer spending $1,000 a day. So let's say the cost per click was $80 to $300. I know it can be more expensive or cheaper depending on the area, but one client can cover the entire day's spend. Just one profitable case can of course cover the spend easy, right? Even the month spend, even more than that, right? So if you can get absolute top for searches like 24-hour criminal lawyer Sydney in this example, then that makes sense to have a campaign for target impression share. But if you're going for number one terms for broad terms like law firm and stuff like that, then you'll chew up your budget super fast and you won't get quality leads coming through and you'll lose a lot of money, and it's not going to guarantee that you'll win those auctions anyway. It is better to hold the absolute top for only urgent or high value cases. So high value searches around, criminal lawyers, for example, and particular service areas like that. And then use top of page for the rest, or maximize conversions. I actually prefer maximize conversions in this case, and only use the absolute top for, those urgent cases. For dentists spending like $300 a day, then use the same logic for emergency dentists near me, etc., for the absolute top, right? But for, of course, teeth whitening and all this stuff, don't bother. Like, just go max conversions and you're good. E-commerce stores for like, shoes and sales and things like that. I personally, despite what's written here, I personally wouldn't go for top page bids or top impression share a lot of the time unless there's a strategic play. So if there's a new launch or release for a certain product and you've got a lot of expectations, a lot of promotion around it, maybe it makes sense to bid on the top of page or the absolute top. But everyday campaigns, you can just stick with maximize conversions and conversion-based bidding strategies. One, because they outperform. A lot of people like compare the market and compare other competitors. They treat you like a vendor anyway, like a commodity. So that's something to keep in mind anyway. So that's how target impression share works. I hope that was helpful. If you've got any questions, leave them below. More than happy to answer, and I'll see you in the next video.